for any institution that's operating without crisp, precise, and ready data, it's hard, especially when the financial model is challenged for many schools. How do you prove that if you don't know really where you are? This is where the environment of technology can make a difference in the realm of student success, however you define it. Data and analytics. How do I use the numbers around me to tell a story, right? And this story about the value of higher education that we need to tell externally, but also internally, right?
That was the great Joe Sallustio from Ellucian and the EdUp Experience family of podcasts. We had a great conversation defining student success, the role that technology plays in it, how that role is changing, and we go on lots of interesting tangents about what higher ed can learn from other industries, whether it's Netflix or the NBA. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Connected College podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Felix. I've helped more than 100 colleges and universities change what they offer, how they operate, and how they're organized to enable student success. And if you're a leader in higher ed and you think that the silos and separations get in the way of student success, then this podcast and my upcoming book, The Connected College, are for you. We're here to learn and work together to bust silos, question tradition, and forge partnerships so that students feel connected to their college, their community, their coursework, and their careers.
Joe Sallustio, welcome back to the podcast. I'm amazed with all the things you're doing. You found time for this conversation between your role at Ellucian, your role spearheading the EdUp family of podcasts. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule, and tell us a little bit about how you got started in higher ed and what you're up to today.
Well, thanks for having me, Elliot. You make me sound like I'm super organized, and I am not. So let's just be clear.
And you're anti-Calendly too. You're anti-calendar link, which I don't know. You're like, that's like the rotary phone of calendar management.
Like the old school. As far as higher education goes, I've worked in higher ed institutions for approximately 23 years across both for-profit and nonprofit institutions, ranging from as little as 1,000 students up to about 10, 12,000 students. And most recently, I am a year into my new role at Ellucian as Vice President of Industry Engagement, trying to bring my expertise across, really overseeing every function in and around higher education during my career, to Ellucian, who creates technology, products, and digital modernization strategies for institutions to better serve students. So higher ed adjacent and tech area, if you will, but I'm having a ball and able to spend my time talking to people like you.
That's awesome. I hear that you've interviewed 17,000 university presidents. Is that about where you?
But of course, I forgot. I didn't forget, but I just didn't remember to say it. My co-founder, Elvin Pretes, and I started the EdUp Experience podcast about 5 years ago. We've interviewed over 1,000 people in and around higher education, business, and industry. And that 1,000 episodes or so includes about 350-ish, plus or minus,
nice
college and university presidents, of which I get a lot of information all the time, all week long, because I interview people every week, Monday through Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. So I'm talking about three or four college presidents a week. And
that's amazing.
It's been crazy.
I like the rebranding of, it's not that you forgot, it's that you didn't remember. That was good. It's not that I'm losing, I'm winning more slowly.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. I use that when I don't call on someone in a meeting and I say, does anybody else have anything to say? And I go, oh, I just didn't remember to call in, so I didn't forget.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, it's such a great story and such great conversations you're a part of and you're leading and you're facilitating. I'd love to hear, like, from all those conversations and from your experience, how do you define student success?
Yeah, I love this question because I don't think there is a real definition for it. I think that we, higher ed proper, we did the fact that student success is everything and nothing. In fact, if you want to sound really smart about higher education and you're in a room and you want to impress everybody, you just say, yeah, we're going to pull the through lines from our strategic plan and ensure it maps to student success. And people will go,
nice.
Oh, wow, that's really insightful. And meanwhile, the person has absolutely no idea what to talk about when they say student success. I was talking to a college president and I asked them this very same question. And their answer was, however the student defines it. And I thought, well, that's a really good place to start. It really is. But we do have to define it as an institution because it becomes part of our mission and part of our value system. So how I personally define it is that it's a set of outcomes that the student is working toward that you need a qualifier on in order to make it student success. For example, an outcome might be academic success, successful course completion. It might be graduation. It could be outcomes that lead to a job within a time frame. So that there's the term graduation, completion, but the qualifier is so important.
Yeah. And otherwise, how do you know you're successful? It's success relative to what measure?
To what?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the measure that we leave out. We want to improve student success in the admissions process. What are you talking about? I have this happen all the time when I'm on the podcast. I actually have an episode where I just give them the box and say, student success means nothing. It means nothing because you have to define it.
Yeah. Do you think it's a good thing that it remains undefined because it forces people to define it for themselves? Or do you think it's a bad thing that there's no accepted definition?
I think it's more on the good side that there's no accepted definition for it. But the caveat is you better define it if you're going to say it. It does us a disservice when we throw it around loosely to cover every activity. It's like somebody who doesn't know anything about higher education. The first sentence they learn is, we want to enhance student success. Like that sentence itself, if you walk, like I said, you walk in and you just say that, somebody will go, oh, they work in higher education.
Yeah. The connected college, either this is a brilliant piece of strategy or it's the Achilles heel of the book. But I didn't define it up front because I feel like that's the whole point of the book is people figuring it out on their own terms, what it means to them. But I really wrestled with that because it's certainly useful to have that unifying definition. Like I think of Gallup defining employee engagement and talking about are people involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work. It's pretty useful to have kind of the three legs of that stool. But on the other hand, I think it's also useful to say, how does a student define it and what are we focused on as an institution?
And you think about number of ways which you can define it because it's all encompassing. We use it in such an all encompassing way. And so it could be student success could be navigating departments and getting a sign off. That could be student success. And at that second level,
finding a mentor, right?
Yeah,
it could be.
It could be something completely on the level. When we think student success, I think everybody thinks outcomes, and that's great. And outcomes to a job is the next layer of that.
Yeah.
But it could be any of those things. It could be successfully navigating a transfer credit policy.
Getting your credits transferred so that you don't have to take extra courses.
That's what I'm after is you need to define it for me. If you're going to say it in front of me, I'm going to ask you to define what you are talking about. Because I think that matters. It even matters in the way when we do podcasts like this. If we just talked about student success broadly, nobody will ever listen. They want to know what the heck is that?
Yeah. And I think the mindset, I think, is such a big part of it. There was at the end of I think it was the end of the last NBA season, a reporter was interviewing, or there was a press conference interviewing Giannis. And the guy said something like, do you consider this season a failure? And he said, I'm not going to make this personal, but just as an example, do you get a promotion every year? He said, and the guy said no. And he said, do you consider all those years you worked when you didn't get a promotion, are those failures? And he said, it's not a failure. It's steps to success. You're on a path and you're making progress. And I think that sense of progress, of progressing towards something, towards those outcomes, is a key piece of it. And I think is part of that mindset.
Yeah, you're right. That's a really good point. That student success is a set of steps that you're taking toward the outcome. It can be those steps. It can be the outcome. could be the umbrella over both of those things.
I think the progress piece is critical and it tracks with all the research about what motivates people, whether it's at work or in school. If you feel like you're progressing, then that's really where so many people derive their satisfaction, their motivation. And a couple of years ago, we did a survey, nationally representative student survey. And what was really interesting from that is the key thing that students wanted was growth, which we were defining it as gaining skills, being challenged, gaining confidence, working on a team, progressing. And if students felt like they were growing, they were happy with everything else. The growth was the thing that was best correlated with everything else. Satisfaction with coursework, facilities, technology.
That's interesting. I think that tracks with the way the Gen Z is too. There's like this impact vibe that they want to have.
Yep.
So there's always this growth mindset, or that I'm elevating myself and that I have meaning in what I'm doing, that makes this generation a little bit different. And we're going to see further generations come that are going to be AI enabled now. It's going to be very different.
Yeah. I would love to actually dig into the role that technology plays in student success. Paint a picture for us. That's pretty broad, so you can pick your lane.
Yeah, I'll take it two ways. So first, analytics and data. For any institution that's operating without crisp, precise, and ready data, it's hard, especially when the financial model is challenged for many schools.
Yeah.
How do you prove that if you don't know really where you are or really how you sit?
Yeah, if you're looking at like dead PDFs, you're in trouble, out of date by the time you bring it to the meeting.
So yeah, exactly. You're right. And quick story, an unnamed institution of which I know has meetings where we're talking 2023 and 2024. None of the technology is working. So you have all the high level administrators in a room and 6 dittos. And I use the term ditto because it's such an old term, right? Like you got dittos in grade school, 6 printouts by department, retention, enrollment, so on, financial aid. And everybody reads and obviously packet of papers in front of you. And I said, okay, so this is where the environment of technology can make a difference in the realm of student success, however you define it. Data and analytics. How do I use the numbers around me to tell a story, right? And this story about the value of higher education that we need to tell externally, but also internally, right? We have to have everybody believe. But then secondarily to that, you look at artificial intelligence and machine learning, product innovation, and you start to go, okay, and you said it earlier, student success, it's part of it is speed. I think there's a big speed part of student success, not in how fast I can navigate my degree necessarily, but how I service my student to help them be successful. And I look at models and I talk about this all the time, like Netflix. Elliot, I know this is you. When you sit down and you watch a Netflix and you bring up the show, in the bottom right corner, there's a little button and it says skip intro. And I know you press it. I know you do. I press it, right? When I call Uber and it says that the Uber is going to take 18 minutes, I go back out and I refresh, and I go back out and I refresh until I get it to an acceptable amount, like 6 minutes is even pushing it. So there's this immediacy vibe that we, in our personal lives and in our professional lives dealing with students, we somehow accept less than that. So how can speed, undergirded by technology, create better outcomes, transfer credit evaluations that are instantaneous, an instant map of a college or university that pops up on my headphones and starts telling me exactly where I'm supposed to walk and when and how many steps it takes to get there?
Yeah, or a push notification about an event that's happening later, a speaker that's happening later.
I'm a Division I athlete. And in the morning, it says, here's the menu for the university today. I don't think you can get enough nutrients. You might want to go to this hall instead of this dining hall because they got chicken and you need more chicken. So you start to think about how AI can enhance that journey. And it's going to be about technology and student success, however you define it, becoming one, because you can't have one without the other these days.
Yeah, I like that. The idea that analytics, data and analytics are the backbone. And then once you have that, you can leverage AI to make things faster, more efficient, more personal, even more like location based? Maybe this is a question that has an answer embedded in it because we just talked about AI, but what do you feel is changing in the role that technology can play in student success?
So at the risk of being self-promoting, but Ellucian obviously is a global ed tech company. I get into this knowledge of
Yeah.
products of what's coming out. So we have this product called Journey. And the reason I bring this up is because it is the culmination of what artificial intelligence can do when it maps to the skills economy. And so
Also
what
a
it
great
does-
band.
What's that?
Also a great band.
What's that?
Journey.
Yeah, there's lots of use cases for the word journey. But what it does is, so an institution, think about it this way, they can take their curriculum, non-credit or for credit, and back it to put it into Journey. And Journey creates a visual skills ontology of basically a skill pathway video game style of how the student can, what skills the student will gain as they progress toward the degree. Now, if I want a different skill, it could hypothetically map to a different degree path. Well, and then it brings in job outcomes and says, with this pathway, with this degree, it maps to these jobs that have these skills. And that's just one example. When I look forward, I look at this product and it goes crazy. And there's other ones out there, right? It's other types of products that do things. Transfer credit is another way. I always come back to that because I think that's a huge barrier to improving the business model of higher ed is the slowness that exists and dependencies in transfer credit evals.
Yeah.
Until we solve that, parts of the business just can't move faster. So how can AI help with that? Those are the things that I think we have to think about.
Back to our student success definition and the idea that you're making progress, you're taking steps along a path or a journey, and that journey maybe changes as you're learning things and as a student realizes they want a different skill or explore a different career path. I think sounds really cool.
Yeah. And how do I do it without losing credit?
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you in my time in higher ed, how many students I came across that had more credits than needed to graduate.
Yeah.
And we're processed. And they're just taking classes because some advisor somewhere missed them.
Yeah.
That's a disservice.
There's that GAO, the Government Accountability Office report. The average credit loss is 43%.
That's insane.
Yeah.
How much we say college costs too much. And sometimes we're part of the problem, like higher ed itself. Simplification, my friend. How do we use technology to simplify a very complex business?
So if Journey is one way of tech enabling student success and analytics and simplification, what are some other great examples of how institutions are adapting to these changes and harnessing technology to make it happen?
So you have it, as I said, you have a very long and wide spectrum of adoption when it comes to technology and modernizing technology. You brought up the rotary phone, which was interesting because many institutions still have the rotary phone of technology for their institution, right? That's the way it works. And you have to like retrain yourself how to turn the buttons. And if you have somebody come in who's newer, if you take a rotary phone and you put it in front of a 15-year-old, they're looking at this. They don't even know what to do with it. Oh, look at this pretty thing that I can turn. Don't even know how to use it. When you look at use cases for technology and how it can enhance, one of them has to be simplifying the other half of transfer credit, which is prior learning assessment policies.
Yep.
How do we simplify those? And how do we get it to the point where our faculty are willing to accept credential-based skill stacking for credit? And if I can have a program or some piece of technology that says these courses in Coursera and this course in Udacity, if I put them together, it's 3 credits. If I had a program to do that, you think about how it would change with partnerships. A lot of schools are partnered with third-party brokers and Guild Education and so on. There's these third-party brokers that do a lot of the brokering between institution and educational pathway. I see that business model becoming less desirable as technology takes out the middleman and starts mapping schools to skills to degree. You don't need that broker necessarily anymore. So you start to think about how technology will change the business model around higher ed. That's the more fascinating conversation.
So the Joe Sallustio model of a successful student journey is getting credit for your prior learning, coming into the right place, the right pathway, and then being able to progress at your own pace as fast as you can or want to, and progressing in smaller steps that stack on each other.
And taking advantage of the different ways we're going to experience post-secondary learning and having that validated at the university level, because I'm not always going to be in place and time 24/7, especially if you deal with an adult student base. And right now, what's coming or what's here for many institutions is an enrollment cliff, and we beat that horse to death. But so many are looking to access the adult learner, you and me, and so many of our peers and colleagues. And how do you do that if you don't have a skip intro button? Expect it to, and it's not going to be skip your class, but how do I speed up in areas that are inefficient for students?
Yeah. And I also think there's the skip recap button too, right? And what's interesting to me is I love these outlier examples and analogies where something that was previously like a waste of time becomes actually really useful. Apple TV had this Vince Vaughn show, what was Bad Monkey?
It's on my list.
Well, I won't spoil it, but the recaps were hilarious. And so you don't want if you either people need to be able to skip the recap, skip the intro, get credit for prior learning, or the process you take them through to orient them and get them in the right place has to be awesome and worthwhile and not feel like a waste of time. Or whenever it was 10 years ago, Delta realized you could actually produce your in-flight safety video to have a bit of humor and use it as a way to differentiate your brand, not just tell people to buckle the seatbelt.
You said the word to brand. We talk about this in marketing way more than I do about marketing, but talk about brand. And in a world where our information, all of us, particularly students, the information is flying at us now, even with artificial intelligence and the way you can generate information, you can't tell good from bad or real from not. That brand becomes trust. Trust drives our decision making and will more and more into the future. So that balancing that brand with lead gen and all those other things is critical.
Yeah. And somebody made this point the other day. I had pointed out that education is what economists call an experience good. You can't evaluate the quality of it until you've consumed it. And our job is to make that experience good, a good experience. And for something like that, brand plays a role because that's a proxy for perhaps for quality in many people's mind. What are they going to get out of it? And that might be about where graduates go or who the corporate partners are or where I can do an experiential learning program or what technology is in play. And earlier you made the point that third-party credit brokers may be less and less needed as the system sorts itself out. But I feel like maybe other partnerships are going to become more important. I'm imagining a future where partnerships across institutions and with companies and community groups are going to be more and more important. What's your take on that?
What I think related to those partnerships is if you look at higher ed, dependency has been on a lack of innovation or sometimes resources. And so you have a company that comes in the middle and says, you can't do this. We can, and we're going to connect you with the workforce. And so they become the wall or the broker. Eventually, higher ed will go direct. They'll go direct to the workforce. Arizona State's a good example of that. They're doing that in multiple. So they'll scale up. I think we'll see universities have really defined business functions. There are some big universities that have, WGU could be an example. They have people all across the country, and their sole job is to work with businesses and drive business partnerships. You don't have to go through a third party when you're doing that yourself. Right. Of course, 100% of the revenue. So I think it's for us in higher ed too, it's about figuring out what the business model of the future is. What's it contain? What do I need? What can I get rid of? What can I stand up myself? Where do I need a partner? I think marketing is one area where a partner is like so critical. Institutions try to internalize everything and run marketing. It's too sophisticated now with the way AI is driving things and the Google algorithms and the sophistication on how to run marketing. It's like a big job now.
And the knowledge, the industry knowledge of what other people are doing.
Yeah.
People partner for different reasons, that being one of them, because you don't know what you don't know and you want a partner that understands the landscape, or it's a capability you don't have or you don't have the capacity. But it's interesting that there is this cycle where you partner for things and then eventually you grow that capacity or you grow that capability in-house, and then you take it on, so you don't need someone to broker credits, or you don't need someone to course share, or whatever it may be.
I think that's part of evolution, but I also think technology will solve some of those challenges eventually, because you'll solve it with automation and instead of people, which is how businesses have just typically solved problems, right? Usually you hire a bunch of people in and take over those functions. But now, what if you can automate some of those functions?
Yeah. And I think what seems to happen, the cycle seems to be that technology facilitates going direct, as you say. So you cut out the middle person, the travel agent of credit transfer or whatever it might be. And then part of that partner goes away, but then it gets reborn, just as there's a resurgence in some kinds of travel agencies around specific kinds of journeys or going to specific places or things that are more complicated. And the institutions evolve, and so do their partners.
Business always reinvents itself.
Yeah.
You'll find this interesting. I had a college president very recently that said they're experimenting with removing all upfront admissions conversations and moving 100% to an AI trained admissions model, to where you would have to subscribe to the university to have human interaction. Like, so the uplift is talking to a human, but otherwise you get Johnny, the AI program, right? Whatever it might be. And I thought, man, talking to you human is like a membership cost. Now, if you call like an airline, you can't get a human being half the time. But what does that look like in higher ed? And is that applicable in a business that is all human? Mostly of what we do, learning, is got to have a human component. So not to say that this college president was wrong, because it's fascinating to see how they were thinking about this, but I'm trying to be very careful with my wording.
Yeah. If you're an institution that has an 80% admit rate, the gatekeeper function or the selection function of admissions is pretty light touch. And maybe you can devote those resources to better communicating who you are and attracting people. You could put the resources in broadening the funnel as opposed to straining people out of it, or whatever, just to torture that analogy.
Get to figuring out as we go.
Yeah.
It's not determined. We all get to use our technology in different ways, but we will use it.
Yeah. And thinking about what role do today's partners play in the future, I think is an interesting thought experiment. 10 years ago, when you're getting all your Amazon packages through the postal service and you're thinking to themselves, like, how long till Amazon vertically integrates this and has their own delivery trucks? Now people are starting to do direct admissions through niche.com. You know, how long till you just do that in-house and then everybody moves on to a different role?
Definitely don't accept getting your Amazon packages more than 3 days, because then you're just going to cancel the order.
Yeah.
So higher ed will get to that point too, where speed becomes a big time differentiator.
Really interesting convo. I want to give you the final word of advice for folks as they're thinking about the role that tech can play in student success and how to adapt to change. What's one piece of advice you'd give to leaders who are trying to make that happen?
Talk to the students. I think talking to students and saying, what do you need? Is it a lost art in this technology that we live in? I don't believe that technology will completely replace, but not even completely replace it. Will never replace the relationship that a student has with a faculty member in the learning process. It will enhance it. It will complement it. It will not be a supplement for it. And I think when we can say, we truly believe that the faculty and student relationship can be maintained it makes us so much more open to looking at the possibilities of technology. If we think that it's going to replace us as educators, it becomes harder to adopt. So I think that it's a mindset. You talked about mindset. And the other thing I would say is make sure you get resources that help you define student success. In fact, I would recommend your new upcoming book that you have.
Oh, thank you.
For research and student success.
The Connected College, Leadership Strategies for Student Success.
That's what I would do. That's where you have great partners as you pull on people who are experts in what you do and what they do. Find out how to do it.
That's great advice, Joe. And I learned something from many things from all of our conversations. And talking to students, I think, is critical. And I remember in another conversation, you said that a different way, which was stay close to students, because your job as a leader is going to keep pulling you away. You're going to get pulled into meetings and reviewing dashboards and reports, but you can't lose sight of the students if you want them to be successful. And I really appreciate you echoing that today and all your insights on where we are and where we're headed. Thank you.
Been an honor to be here, my friend. Thanks for the invite, and you can count on me anytime.
And where can folks find you?
They can find me
you're
on
everywhere, but
you can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me. The EdUpExperience.com is an easy way to. That's it. Easy to find it.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening to the Connected College podcast. Subscribe to my Connected College newsletter at elliottfelix.com for insights and excerpts from my upcoming book, tools you can download, and special offers. You can also find more information about talks I've given, articles I've written, and upcoming events there. And please support the podcast by rating and reviewing it wherever you're listening. Let's create connected colleges where students will succeed.